It was just an old doll, found buried in the attic dust. Alice, curious and unafraid, held it up to the light. Its glass eyes seemed to flicker with a knowing stare. The doll's porcelain face was cracked, a silent testament to its age. Its hair, once probably golden and shiny, now hung in tangled, dirty strands. Alice felt a shiver travel down her spine as she brushed the hair from its face. It was just a child's toy, she reminded herself, trying to shake off the unease. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the attic grew darker and the doll's eyes seemed to follow her every move. Alice's grandmother knew the doll. "Sophie," she whispered, her voice a mix of fear and sorrow. It was a name spoken in hushed tones, a relic of a forgotten past. "Sophie belonged to a little girl long ago, a child who never grew up," her grandmother continued, her eyes clouded with memories. "They say she vanished, and all that was left was this doll." The room grew colder with each word. The story intrigued Alice. She felt a connection to the doll, a pull from the world beyond that she couldn't explain. It was as if the doll was whispering to her, begging to be understood and remembered. That night, Alice couldn't sleep. The doll sat on her dresser, staring blankly into the darkness. There was a palpable tension in the air, a thick silence that seemed to buzz with whispered secrets. Around midnight, the quiet was shattered by a faint giggle, a sound of pure innocence twisted by the night's shadows. Alice sat up, heart pounding, staring at the doll whose lips seemed upturned in a slight, unsettling smile. The next few nights brought more disturbances. Objects moved, soft lullabies filled the air, and the doll's position changed ever so slightly. Each morning, Alice would find it facing a new direction, as if it had been watching her sleep. Determined to understand, Alice started researching. The local library held old newspapers that mentioned the doll. It was found at various scenes: an orphanage fire, a closed-down hospital, places of sorrow and despair. The articles hinted at a curse, something ancient and vengeful tied to the doll. Each owner had experienced tragedies, losses that defied explanation, and seemed connected to the doll's presence. Alice felt a chill as she read. The more she discovered, the more she realized the danger she had brought into her home. The doll wasn't just a toy, it was a vessel, carrying with it a history of darkness and death. One evening as dusk crept in, Alice saw her. A little girl, transparent and ethereal, stood in the corner of her room. She was looking at the doll, her expression one of longing and profound sadness. "Alice, help me," the apparition whispered. Her voice was a mere breath, yet it filled the room with a bone-chilling cold. The ghostly girl extended her hand towards the doll, then towards Alice. Alice, frozen with fear, could only watch as the spirit grew more vivid. Then, just as suddenly as she appeared, the girl vanished, leaving behind a cold spot and the lingering scent of roses, old, wilted roses. In her quest for answers, Alice learned about an old toy maker who once lived in town. He was known for his exquisite dolls, each crafted with obsessive care. But there was something unsettling about him, something secretive and dark. Locals whispered that he had made a pact with something otherworldly to bring his dolls to life. They were not mere toys, but containers for souls, trapped and tormented. The toy maker had disappeared, leaving behind his haunted creations. The story added layers to the mystery. Alice understood the magnitude of what she was dealing with. It wasn't just about a haunted doll, it was about a soul, trapped and yearning for release. Alice decided it was time to act. With the help of a local priest and her grandmother, they prepared a ritual to cleanse the doll. They gathered old herbs, candles, and holy water, setting up a circle around the doll. As they chanted, the air grew thick, the candles flickered wildly, and the doll's eyes seemed to weep. The atmosphere was charged with electricity, with a battle of wills between the living and the spirit world. The ritual lasted for hours. Just as dawn was breaking, a scream pierced the air, a sound both victorious and mournful. Then, silence. The doll lay still, its eyes dull and lifeless. Had they succeeded, or had they released something even more terrifying? Despite the ritual, the phenomena intensified. Shadows danced on the walls and cold drafts swept through the house. The doll, previously quiet, now seemed to pulsate with a malevolent energy. Alice felt besieged, trapped in her own home with an entity that refused to leave. Each night brought new terrors, and she felt her sanity slipping as the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred. In desperation, Alice sought out more radical solutions. She consulted mediums, witch doctors, anyone who might know how to sever the connection between the doll and the spirit world. Each attempt drained her, leaving her more desperate and afraid. It came to a head on a stormy night. Thunder rolled as Alice confronted the doll once more, determined to end the torment. She faced the doll, her resolve steeling her against the supernatural forces at play. The doll levitated, its eyes glowing red as if lit by an inner fire. Alice, chanting incantations, pushed through her fear. The air was electric, charged with the power of her words against the darkness. The battle raged until the first light of dawn. Exhausted but triumphant, Alice watched as the doll crashed to the floor inert. The storm cleared, and for the first time in months, the house felt peaceful, the haunting seemingly at an end. Alice buried the doll under a willow tree, the sunrise casting long shadows on the ground. It was a quiet ceremony, attended only by those who had shared her ordeal. As she placed the last shovel of dirt, she felt a release, a sense of closure. The earth reclaimed the doll, sealing away the darkness it had brought into her life. The tale of the haunted doll would live on, a chilling story of the lengths one must go to confront and overcome the echoes of the past. But for Alice, it was the end of a nightmare and the beginning of a renewed, peaceful life.